he can see that it's dick shit.
Oh my God!
Welcome to episode 48 of the Serial Chillers podcast. I am your host, Jesse, and thank you for stopping by. Today, we have two guests across the internet, as well as co-host Greg and his bunker far away. One of our guests, Dr. Kendall Thornton. That's right, we officially, y'all. Her husband, Andy Thornton. He's written some songs in his day, most popularly known by...
It's the human connection.
Oh, some of you might remember that. Some of you might not. But episode 48 is wild. Brian Dugan is one of the worst pieces of shit in history. Sit back, relax, and enjoy episode 48 of the Serial Chillers podcast. He hasn't been recording anything until right now.
Yeah.
We're good. We're good.
We're ready.
I'm ready.
All right. Well, welcome you guys and everybody to episode 48 of 1 million of the Serial Chillers podcast from the Super Network Studios. I am here, as always, across the internet with co-host Greg. How goes it, co-host Greg?
Doing well, thank you.
Greg, the rations aplenty and the bunker is fine?
Yes, we're fully stocked.
As always.
I told you about the mega tsunami headed for California, so I have my seat in the upright position. I have my flotation device. I'm good.
Which is surprising to me, and I feel like you'll probably end up editing this out because you pretty much just outed your location.
Somewhere between Hawaii and California.
Find me. And
What's that thing? What's that really deep hole in the ocean? The Marinara Trench.
Sounds delicious. We're also welcoming two other guests that we've tried to have on the show a couple times, and it hasn't worked out. First of all, the one who's laughing the least, we'll get her on first, so Andy has a little bit of time. Welcome, Dr. Kendall.
Hey, it me.
Put that degree to work, girl.
Yes, honey.
So, welcome, Kendall. It is very good to have you. Kendall and I, longtime friends. She is finally on the show, and I am very happy to have her.
Yes,
Kendall, I have a question.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Doctor, I have a question.
Yes. Normie.
Plebe. What are you a doctor of?
So I am a doctor of clinical psychology.
Ah, so
So
very
you'll fit in good here.
Yeah, I was gonna say very, very fitting. Well, good thing we waited till episode 48 to utilize your skills. Idiots.
No worries. I was just waiting for my moment to shine.
And sitting in the wing here, very eager to be introduced. I could see it in his face. Welcome to the show, Andy.
Hey guys. Hey. Thanks for having me on.
It's
Greg, I think that's the Marianas Trench, not the Marinara Trench.
either works. I think they're interchangeable.
That's fair. I think that's all right.
All right, well, you guys know how the show works, but let me explain it for anybody that doesn't. Each week, I sit down with old friends, new friends, good friends, and bad friends, and tell them the story of an infamous serial killer. Throughout the show, you guys can chime in on my story, and if you have brought a story of your own that is true crime, dark, creepy, unsolved, or otherwise mysterious, please feel free to share it. Lastly, if you have questions about the questions, make sure to ask questions, because I cannot answer questions about questions if you never ask questions. Any questions?
Got it. No questions at this time.
I try to
sir.
make it as non-confusing as possible here. So welcome to and let's play the Serial Chillers podcast. All right. You guys, today's serial killer, very unknown as far as I know, Brian James Dugan.
Oh, I think I've heard that name, but I don't know the story off the top.
When I saw the name, that's exactly what I thought. And so one of the first things I always do, because a great source for knowledge, is whether it's a full-length documentary or some investigation discovery 15-minute piece, there's almost always some type of video doc that you can go, and that's the first place, you get that kind of base of information from me. That's how I kind of like to do it. I'll start kind of gathering other sources. There is no documentary for this gentleman, as far as I can tell. No 15-minute episode. There's like maybe a handful of news clips, but other than that, a lot of newspaper archive research for this one. So, not a ton on him, but I just thought an interesting one, so I wanted to bring it for you guys. So, Brian James Dugan, question number 1: in what year is Brian Dugan born?
We just guess off the top?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and say 1976.
I'm glad you clarified 1976.
Thanks.
Maybe I'll guess a little older since there's not a lot on him. So I'll say 1921.
Kendall says
That's
21.
the year Hemingway married his first wife.
There you go. Kendall, full of fun little factoids for you guys tonight. And
Hey.
Andy, you're 20 years off, but getting the points. Yes.
Hey.
Because Brian Dugan is born September 23rd, 1956.
Oh, I was hoping it was 1996.
Yeah.
So Andy's going to take a 250-0 lead right off the bat. There's 8 questions today, guys. 7 more to get out of that hole, Kendall. Don't worry. On September 23rd, 1956, he's born to James and Genevieve Dugan in Nashua, New Hampshire. He is the second of 5 children, and he emerged before the delivery doctor arrived in the room. And I don't know how this could possibly be proven, but the story goes that the nurse did not feel comfortable delivering the baby, therefore pushed Brian back in and strapped the mother's knees together so that she couldn't give birth to the baby until the doctor got there, which led to an oxygen deprivation and possible brain damage before Brian was born.
Is that even possible?
I would not be qualified to give
Yeah,
an opinion on that.
that.
Not a lot on his.
Wait, Kendall's a doctor.
Not that kind of doctor, bro. Not that kind of doctor.
Fair enough. Had to take a shot.
So, not a whole lot on his very young and early childhood, but in 1964, he's 8 years old, and he and his brother, kind of just messing around with matches, accidentally burned down their garage. So he's 8 years old, and I believe his brother is 1 or 2 years older than him. So we're talking an 8 and a 10-year-old brother accidentally burned down the garage of their family home.
So that's 2 from the McDonald 3. What is it? McDonald Triangle? McDonald Triad?
The McDonald Triad.
Yeah.
Fire starting, bedwetting, and killing animals, right?
Yes, it is. Greg, we were wrong about the head injury. I recently just saw it. Killing animals is the interchangeable. We should have swapped with head injury. But that's okay. Head injury is very prevalent in the serial killers as well, Greg. So you're not completely incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
just mostly incorrect.
Just technically incorrect. So after this incident, they, I guess, square up with the garage. They move to a village of Lisle in DuPage County, Illinois. At this point, Brian becomes a very prevalent bedwetter. So there you go. Triangle
There's
complete.
your McDonald Triad.
Yeah, complete. Beep, beep, beep. But it is said that his father is also still at this time an occasional bedwetter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they also said that the children were, Brian said that they were tormented by their parents, and never anything life-threatening, but definitely sort of cruel and unusual. They would do things like punish them by having them consume gross amounts of hot sauce, or what were some of the other ones? Let me see. I think I have them.
That's pretty fucking awful, man.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, that's awful.
and their
Yeah.
kid. Oh, okay.
Like-
So one time she caught them playing with the matches. So she made them both light a match and hold it out until the flame reached their fingers and made them hold it. So
That's fucked.
Yeah, that's not cool either.
yeah, so
Why couldn't you just tell him, hey man, quit fucking playing with matches?
maybe she had a bunch of times. I'm not saying what she did was correct, but devil's advocate. Maybe I'm hoping
Maybe
that
child
wasn't.
abuse
Yeah, I mean,
is warranted.
I didn't say you. God damn it!
It's not. It's a little more than a prank.
Yeah, yeah. Cruel and unusual. That's what it was. Like I said, like they never put him in a closet for 5 days and took away food. So I'm not saying that what they did was right, but it wasn't anything ever life threatening. Yes, that is fucked up.
So
Yeah.
do you want to know the clinical term for children who urinate themselves and don't have control over that? It's called enuresis. And if they, have a bowel movement, it's called encopresis. And those are the clinical terms for what happens. And it can be caused sometimes by trauma.
Like being stuffed back into your mother.
Yeah, like being stuffed back in your mother or being force-fed hot sauce.
How about that?
Yeah.
How about when a father is doing it? Is that something that?
What?
How about when a grown like they said his father was the occasional bedwetter still as a grown man? Is that?
Yeah, I
Ooh,
don't
is it
know, because
genetic?
enuresis and encopresis is typically with children. So I don't. If a grown man is doing that, that probably means maybe he has a disability or some kind of inhibition issue. I'm not sure.
Dr.
Don't
Kindle
kink
stumped.
shame him. Don't kink shame him.
Uh-oh. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
Okay, we'll move on then. So, on January 23rd, 1972, I'm guessing it's 23rd because for some reason I have January 32nd written here, and that is not a day in January. So, January 23rd, 1972, he's arrested for burglary of a gas station and put under court supervision. He would become known around town as a drug user and a thief. Now, we talk about a lot of these killers and how some of them kind of lay low and they're never really suspected, and some of them are lifelong killers or lifelong criminals where they're in and out of. Charles Manson, we didn't just finish, but Charles Manson, he spent more of his life in prison than not before being arrested for the Manson family murders.
God, what was his name? What was the one that cruised around with Otis Toole?
Henry Lee Lucas.
Yes, thank you. He did his fair amount of time, didn't he?
Yes.
Like especially a lot of the older guys like that, they spent a good chunk of time, and that's where they got these wild ideas, and that's that hobo lifestyle that they used to love.
It's the right time for that too, because he's gonna get to thrive in the 70s.
Yes, get to travel, free love.
Free love. So, in 1972, he's only 16 at this time. His family's going to move to Batavia, a Chicago suburb on the border of DuPage and Kane counties. He gets enrolled in the local high school, and he does not do well in this school. The only quote I found says, "Erratic actions and an overwhelming life during this time would lead to him being made a ward of the Kane County Court." So, whatever
Basically,
that means.
they said, "Clean your shit up, or you're gonna be locked up."
Yeah, they took him. So I think it had something to do with an action in school. That's why this school seems to be mentioned very closely with the situation. But the court sends him to a youth home in Batavia, and his family moved to the east side of Aurora, Illinois, moving away from the home. So I think he felt a little bit of abandonment there, and I think it just so happened to be coincidental. I don't think they were attempting to move away from him, but the house they moved in the time. They didn't stop contact with him or anything, but from what I can understand, he took it very personally that they moved their home further from the facility that he was being held in.
So did he become a ward because he was being taken out of his parents' custody, or because he needed like inpatient
He
care?
needed inpatient care.
Okay.
I think he was being violent in school, and the teachers noticed and became beyond a talking with the parents.
Mm-hmm.
But again, there's not a ton about him, so it's firsthand accounts and newspaper articles from the mid '80s. So
Totally.
damn yous. In December of 1972, he's released from the youth home. So he spends, I think it's 6 months in there. And he's taken to the home very quickly after arriving to the new high school. It's less than 6 months. So I guess to me that's very quickly to be in a new home, new school, placed into a mental facility beyond your
He
control.
did it on purpose to get a bad boy reputation so nobody would pester him.
Nobody mess with me. Nobody mess with me.
He was probably getting bullied, and so he asked some friends and was like, "Hey man, can you guys come like pick me up, make it look good?"
And he accidentally spent 6 months in a mental facility.
Well, they made it look really good.
So he gets released in December, and during this time, he says that Brian tried to molest him upon his return from the youth home. So, and it's his older brother. So he starts to think that, like, obviously something happened in that facility beyond his control. They think that there was some assault happening to Brian in the facility, his family. Because this is and I don't know, you're the doctor, maybe you can shed some light on that. And I do know a little bit about just the fact that when we look at the killers from the beginning, it just seems to be a progression to starting small, and it just continually builds to murder eventually. Does this seem like something that is small progress, or does it seem more like maybe a trauma from the facility? That's what his family thinks.
They think that because Brian was traumatized in the facility, that ended up with him becoming a psychopath.
I think it was more his immediate return home, like next day, he is trying to fondle his siblings. He was immediately very different, but he did spend 6 months in a facility, I can imagine.
It was like a Boys Town style facility.
It doesn't seem that way. It doesn't seem that. I don't know. It's just
yeah, I think it also just goes back to that age-old debate of, like, is psychopathy and sociopathy nature or nurture? I mean, in reality, it's probably some combination of both, right? Like, there's probably some genetic predisposition that from an early age he had some of these things going on, and then you add in complex trauma, and how could that not?
It's like a ticking time bomb.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, like with psychosis, you can have a genetic predisposition, and depending whether you're exposed to certain levels of stress or not, it gets triggered. And
well, yeah, but if you also have a bunch of kids who are all going through that adolescent growing up, trying to be the tough guy, testosterone driven phase, and they're all around each other with really limited, what I would guess is limited supervision. That the violent tendencies are bred like that.
When we were teenagers, we all knew each other. We were awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, who knows? It could be any combination of things, I guess.
Wild. It's just nice to have an actual professional's opinion. I guess we're just going to take it while we have it. So
yeah,
be ready for a few more of those zingers tonight.
Yes.
So I guess just looking back on it, his brother always said that he believed that his return from that facility was kind of a big turning point for him. And to cement that fact, 3 days after returning from the facility, he and his friend robbed a Kentucky Fried Chicken.
That's a great idea.
Question number 2. How much money did they get in this KFC robbery? It's just an open guess.
Enough to make it worth getting back in the drive-thru and
Greg,
doing it again.
Greg, be ready because just for fun, I'm going to need a conversion. This is $1972.
$1972. Okay.
So are we guessing in $1972?
No. I mean, you just guess in the dollars, and I want to find out about what that equals now.
Okay.
How much money did they get in the KFC robbery?
50 grand.
50 grand. That is a KFC blowout.
KFC in Beverly Hills.
What? You don't think they carry a lot of cash?
I don't know.
I don't think in 19... What was it? 1970?
I don't even think they were worth 50 grand in 1970.
Look, I don't know how much money a KFC has.
Listen, I've got $30,000. I want to buy your KFC franchise.
Yeah, no shit.
Sold.
All right. Kendall.
They sell a lot of chicken.
Kendall's guess is
It's great chicken.
$50,000.
I mean, I can see why you went there.
Andy?
Yeah, I'm gonna say like $35.
$1, Bob. All right. So I feel like Kendall was on the right path, but maybe just overshot it a little because they did steal in this robbery $4,000.
Does that mean
Wow.
That means
can I win the points?
Well, see, Andy was $3,965 off.
I was
You were $46,000 off. So Andy's gonna get the points on this one.
Even with inflation,
I thought
you were still pretty far off. I mean, you were definitely you were closer to the ballpark.
What are you at with inflation?
In 1972, $4,000 was similar to $23,880.77 today.
But see, that blows my mind.
I was way closer.
They got off with a lot of goods, dude.
That's a lot of money for a chicken joint.
Do you think they took some chicken too? Do you think he was like, grab a 10-piece, and the other guy was like, crispy?
Extra.
Had to.
Oh my gosh. So right after they commit the robbery of $4,000, the two men flee to Iowa and commit burglaries in Dubuque County. On December 28th, 1972, police catch up and arrest Brian and his friend. They immediately both confess to both of their crimes. No problems. We did it. Take us. February 19th, 1973, there is a break-in at K.D. Waldo Middle School. It leads back to Brian, and once questioned about it, confesses to the burglary without even being pressed very much. So I think, for me now, it looks like somebody who just really wants the attention of whatever he can get it from. Like, oh, how'd you catch me? He's like, you're still here. You broke a window and you stood here. This is top-notch police work, officer. Congratulations.
Threw it from right over here. That was pretty far, huh? Tell me what a good job I did. Thanks, Dad. I mean, officer.
Do you like hot sauce? So, April 12th, 1973, Brian quits school. This would have been his sophomore year. He's 15 or 16 at this time. Let's see, 16.
A worldly educated man. He's
yes,
ready.
Indeed. So April 1974, the 16-year-old, what else are you going to do? Start working small jobs, try to get your life together and realize that you don't need the diploma, but, maybe you can make it without it. Nope, commits a break-in at the Twirly Top, an old-fashioned ice cream shop, and on the same night attacks a young girl in Lyle. He's arrested 2 times in Aurora, first for gasoline theft, then for burglary. The gasoline theft was dropped due to the fact that a witness was a no-show in court.
I feel like he just doesn't have any impulse control. He's like, I want chicken. I want ice cream.
Also, while I'm here, give me $4,000.
I'll just take the money while I'm here for the chicken and the ice cream.
He got halfway through getting the chicken and his brain went, wait a second. If we had money, we could get more chicken.
That's right.
So, he's not doing well, it doesn't seem. He gets probation for the previous crimes. That's just for the result of the home burglary. Obviously, he doesn't get anything for the gas theft. No witness. August 4th, 1974. He's now 17 years old, and he's arrested while sniffing paint. And he resists arrest at this time by kicking officers. They said he just flailed until they got him in the car. So he was kicking.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I like to think that he didn't move his upper body. He was just running around like kicking with his lower, just kicking with his lower body. Kept yelling, "Kick fight!"
Kept going.
He's like actually 4 years old.
That's what I feel like the whole time. You're like, is he a toddler? I feel like he's a toddler.
You have an almost 4-year-old. Are there a lot of similarities, differences?
Yes, I got kicked in the face today.
How many times?
Just the once, but only because I know how to dodge that shit now.
You can deflect them.
Mm-hmm. It's all about parry. Parry.
Yeah.
So, let's see. He's arrested while sniffing paint. He kicks the officers resisting. The charges for this include resisting an officer, criminal damage to property, aggravated battery, and unlawful use of an intoxicating substance. Before he can be fully charged for this, he flees to California. There, he and his friend serve 30 days in jail for petty theft right when they get there, possession of fireworks and narcotics paraphernalia, and possession of cannabis. These guys like to party. You understand?
I mean,
I feel like
what'd you do in California? Well, we smoked weed and blew up fireworks.
This is fucking dope till the,
I feel
till the
like
cops
that's-
rolled up.
If California would just legalize fireworks,
Pretty normal at this point.
I mean, you can't have anything that shoots up in the air in California. So, I mean, California's already got the weed thing going for it. Just legalize fireworks, and
There's a bunch of stone people burning the state down.
the state's already catches on fire every year. I mean, what difference does it
Let's
make?
get the annual burn going.
Yeah, just let the Brian Dugans of the world use their narcotics and shoot their fireworks. God.
So after they were released, Brian and his friend were arrested again for possession of Valium and marijuana, as well as disorderly conduct. See, here's the thing, is I'm guessing you're not going to get arrested for the possession of the marijuana and Valium unless the police are getting called out for the disorderly conduct. So if you're going to be carrying the marijuana and the Valium, maybe I don't know, chill the fuck out. Just
Yeah.
just
Keep
maybe.
your conduct
idea.
more orderly.
Yes.
I wish I could get a
Where's your
sound
proof?
clip of Jim Carrey from Liar Liar.
Stop breaking the law, asshole!
You can.
It's just stop.
That's
It's not hard
classic.
to not steal stuff.
Yeah.
I do it all the time.
Yeah.
In fact, I've done it for years.
Not consecutively, but years.
So, Brian does not get charged for the Valium and marijuana arrests because it's fucking 1974 and he just uses a fake name. Wonderful.
Okay.
In early of 1975, he returns to Illinois and attacks his sister. Apparently, he beat her and tried to sexually assault her. So he spends a few days in jail. He is then arrested for bringing a hunting knife into a hospital.
I wonder what he was doing with a hunting knife in a hospital.
I think the story goes that he just walked into the hospital with the hunting knife. Like, there was no story. He just...
I wear this on my belt.
No, I
How
think it was
many-
in his hand.
How many arrests is this so far?
I haven't kept count, but I think it's somewhere around 10. Probably.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say like 11.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
it's too many. And you know what? He's 18 right now.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he's got his whole life ahead of him.
Yeah.
He returns to Illinois, attacks his sister, gets arrested for the knife in the hospital incident. His sister Hillary takes him in DuPage County, a town in the town of Villa Park. While living with his sister Hillary, he sets fire to an elementary school, then threatens his sister Hillary and her child multiple times, at one point kicking out the headlights of her car so she could not go home one night. So they're like out somewhere, and he kicked out the headlights of her car so she couldn't drive that night.
Who is this guy? Is he a super villain? Who sets
Yeah,
fire to an
no
elementary
shit.
school?
Yeah, Brian Dugan.
Brian's wild, man.
Brian's fuckface extraordinaire.
It does sound like though it. Okay, do you want my diagnostic thoughts?
I do want to hear your clinical diagnosis.
Okay, I mean, I don't think he. It sounds like a psychopath. It sounds like he just has antisocial personality disorder, meaning he just like can't follow the rules. But he doesn't sound smart enough or manipulative enough to be like a true psychopath.
So does that mean he understands the rules, but he just fucking can't do it, or he just really doesn't have a firm grasp, so he just behaves the way that he behaves?
I mean, antisocial personality disorder is technically the diagnosis you would give anyone along the lines that is like breaking the law, breaking social rules, doesn't have remorse. But I think a psychopath is more intelligent, more clever, and intentionally withholds and manipulates. I think someone with antisocial can just not care, right? Like, just doesn't have remorse. But it sounds, that's why it's like every time he gets caught, he's just like, oh, well, it was me.
Yeah.
How dangerous is it to be or to have antisocial personality disorder and impulse control, like you mentioned earlier?
Well, you end up being Brian Dugan.
Well, I mean, is that pretty par for the course though, to just lash out at random people and events for no particular reason?
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds like one, he's not even I mean, it's getting real technical. His frontal lobe's not even fully developed yet. Like, he's not even at the age that his brain is done developing the impulse control parts.
But it probably is done developing. I mean, he huffed a bunch of paint. He was doing Valium and smoking weed.
And remember, at the time he's burning the school down, he's 19.
Yeah.
So I feel like his brain probably peaked before that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you can have antisocial and have impulse control, but it sounds like he doesn't, and that combination is probably most often just results in people being in jail, and so they don't keep committing crimes because they're incarcerated.
Yeah. Sad.
Except he keeps getting out.
Cycle. Yes.
Right. Right.
Which on March 5th, 1976, he's arrested for the elementary school arson from early of 1975. He pleads guilty to the fire. But the other charge of the burglary of the school, the battery and assault of his sister, and the criminal damage to property were all dropped because he pled guilty. That's something we'll see, too, is he constantly, every time he goes in, it's almost like he commits additional crimes to have backup for the bigger crime. Like, well, look, I'll give you I did that big one, but look, I didn't do any of this other shit. You got to give me that because I'll admit to this, and we'll be good there. Mm-hmm. So he sets himself up quite well. It almost seems. So
well, maybe he is smarter than we give him credit for.
Right. So
I think he's trying to figure out how to play the system, because it seems like his crimes have been ramping up, and it seems like he's been taking the pleas and like pleading down the smaller crimes to, like, I don't know, test the waters, I guess.
Yeah. For the elementary school fire, he receives a sentence of, it's a 3 to 5 year sentence. 3 to 5 years.
I was like,
how long of this 3 to 5 year sentence is he going to serve? Just guess.
Okay. Refresher, is he white?
He is white.
that is a fair question in the 70s.
It's a fair question now.
And it's a fair question now.
Oh, sorry. Don't mean to get political on serial killers.
It's cool. We'll edit it out.
I would. Well, Andy, you guess first this time.
Okay. 2 years.
Of his 3 to 5 year sentence.
Of his 3 to 5 year sentence.
And he
got out early for good behavior.
2 years of his 3 to 5 year sentence.
I say 8 months.
Kendall says 8 months.
Got out real early for good behavior.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Kendall nearly gets a 1,000 point bonus because Brian Dugan stays in prison for 7 months.
Ooh,
Whoa.
Yep. So Kindle's going to get 250, almost 1,000 on that one. And it is a game. 250 Kindle, 500 Andy. And yes,
Woo woo.
of his 3 to 5 year sentence for fucking setting fire to a motherfucking elementary school, Brian Dugan serves just shy, 1 day shy of 7 months. So we're calling it 7 months. Yeah.
So you might not have this information. Was school like in session, or was it like a Saturday?
I think it was, it was like he burned it down one night. Yeah.
School's not in session.
So
No children
they're
at the
probably able
school.
to plead away stuff like malicious intent and
All that delicious stuff.
yeah, like attempted murder, except for the night janitor, but nobody cared about that guy.
Oh,
That poor bastard.
that poor guy.
Damn.
So he serves less than 7 months, and 3 months after getting out of that 7-month sentence, he breaks into 2 churches in Aurora, Illinois, and is promptly caught, pleads guilty to the 2 church burglaries, and does 6 months in jail. Yes. Did I mention that the sentence was 2 years, 2 to 4, and he does 6 months?
Jesus.
Yes. So on September 19th, 1977, Brian was paroled. He's 21 years old now, you guys. Doesn't it seem like he's 45 now in the timeline?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it does.
21. So September 30th of 1978, 22-year-old Brian breaks into the same high school he broke into in 1975. One of those burglary charges we talked about earlier.
I'm back, bitch.
Yeah. April 19th, 1979, while breaking and entering, the breaking and entering case is still ongoing from the high school. He is charged with having a 14-year-old runaway girl living in his house. He's just harboring 14-year-old runaways.
God
How does
damn
he
it,
have a
Brian.
house?
He's 22. He's doing his thing, man. You know.
He's 22 doing what? I mean, he's been
After
in
being in
prison
prison.
most of his life. What are your skills? Well, I can make a
Totally.
shank out of dry toilet paper. I can make wine in your toilet if you want. What else? What other kind of skills do you have? Well, I can eat hella fast. I mean, what the fuck? How do you get a house at 22 with no job and nothing?
I mean, I didn't say he owned it or that it wasn't a flop house. Just that it was his place of
That's real.
residence.
I was thinking like when you watch TV and they always live in like a mad nice apartment because
He just lived in the friend's apartment with this 14-year-old runaway. Yep.
that's kind of what I was thinking, but your thing makes more sense.
That's why we're partners, man. We balance each other, you know? Yes, he has a 14-year-old runaway in his flop house. Let's just say that. He's also charged with an additional burglary in Aurora, and this time he serves 3 years of a 7-year sentence. This son of a bitch, right?
That's awful. That's so frustrating.
I can't get over it. I can't get over it. And it just seems, it seems like we just tell the same story every episode, right?
Yeah.
Like this is just what happens. And then, like, why wouldn't he escalate? He feels fucking invincible right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can do anything.
Like, yeah, put me in jail. I'll be out. I'll do 30% of the sentence they give me. And what? On July 13th, 1982, he's now 26 years old. He's paroled. He's released from Bernard Correctional Center. He later breaks parole when he tries to leave town, and they send him to Joliet Center. On July 23rd, 1982, he is out once more and attacks a woman in Aurora who gets away. The charges are dropped when his brother was an alibi. How the fuck does that work? No, that's my bro. Yeah, hey, I was with him. All right, cool, man. You guys are good. Like,
Hey, was he with you? Yeah.
what day? Thursday, last week. Thursday.
All the days, man. He's my brother.
This is
You know what that made me think of? The Simpsons when they're arresting Snake Jailbird, and he's like,
I'll be back on the street in 24 hours.
We're trying to make it 12.
that's exactly it.
that's what it makes me think of because this guy just gets locked up, and then he's like, I'll be out with plenty of time. It'll be fine.
Yeah, the attitude towards it seemed that way too, because he's just like, I'm sure with all of his psychological issues combined with the fact that he is aware that he is not really being truly punished to the extent at which he should be. He
Like he's aware he can manipulate the system.
Yeah, so if he wasn't smart enough before, he's at least learning now, you know? If he didn't have these skills initially.
Yep.
Piece of shit. February 25th, 1983. This is about 6 months later. He's released from Joliet Correctional Facility. He gets away from the charge of attacking the woman from his brother's alibi. At this time, he abducts, rapes, and murders 10-year-old Janine Nicarico. So, 10-year-old Janine Nicarico, who was born July 7th, 1972, was abducted from her home in Naperville, Illinois. The only reason Janine Nicarico was home that day was that she was homesick from school, so both of her parents still had to go to work, but they left her home because that's what sick kids do. They stay home, and sometimes parents can't stay home with sick kids. She was 10, probably stayed home alone plenty of times. It's 72. She was made a target. She was homesick. She was taken. She was raped and killed. Her body was found 2 days later, 6 miles from her home. Later, Rolando Cruz, a 20-year-old gang member from Aurora, he came to the attention of the police because he had fed them false information about the murder in an attempt to claim a $10,000 reward being offered. Soon, police charged Cruz along with Alejandro Hernandez and Stephen Buckley with Janine's rape and murder despite a lack of evidence. Cruz and Hernandez were convicted and sentenced to death. The jury deadlocked on Buckley and was not retired. Yes.
Can I say something political now?
Yeah, pretty crazy. And we'll actually kind of
That's awful.
We'll touch on.
You
this
always
later.
can, like I said, if it's too hot, if it's too spicy, if your takes are too hot for
TV.
our podcast week, for TV, we can always cut it. So feel free, fire away.
Yeah, so the white guy never gets any jail time, but what Ramon and Cruz do, that's interesting.
Yeah, immediately sentenced to death, it seems.
Sentenced to death.
Right. So we'll make it fun. So we'll take a little break right here. Come back. Greg's got an alien story for us. So, it's not always true crime, guys. We try to have some fun. Here. You know what I'm saying?
Hey.
All right, guys. So
It actually happened.
come back or I'll kill you.
Okay.
Greg might, though. He had it. Welcome back, everybody, to the Serial Chillers podcast. If you're back, we don't have to kill you. That's great, because we've gotten a little lazy on the killing. So if you're behind, everybody stick with us. We're going to catch up on all our killings. We do appreciate everybody who's letting us get in there and do the killing. So appreciate that. We're coming back because we wanted to do a story a little outside of the true crime. Greg always has the good ones. So Greg said, I want to do an alien story. And I said, yeah. And here we are. Greg, what do you got?
It is probably one of the most, if not the most, famous alien abduction story out there.
Yeah.
E.T.
Do you guys believe in aliens? Do you too, Andy, Kendall?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, do you say absolutely like it's a statistical possibility or almost a statistical certainty that aliens exist? Or are you like, yes, dude, little green men have been here. Hillary Clinton is a fucking lizard, and like Are you like? So I just kind of want to know how close to my camp you are. Versus.
Well, here's my thing. Personally, I believe in everything. I believe in anything until proven otherwise. So I'm the opposite of most people. Bigfoot, yeah, of course. Aliens, obviously. Ghosts, most definitely. Loch Ness Monster, probably.
Cool. Andy?
Yeah, dude, I totally believe in aliens. I just like to, like, I don't know, romanticize space in general. So, like,
It is the final frontier.
yeah, exactly. Like, it's just, I don't know, it's so vast.
Yeah. As cool as space is, though, did you know we know more about space than we do about the bottom of the ocean?
Yes.
I did know that. Yeah,
That's fucked up. That's not
That
like
is
that
fucked
shouldn't.
up.
That's yeah. But
I know enough about the ocean that I don't want to go in it, though. So
yeah, I've seen enough pictures of
Thalassophobia, supported
anglerfish.
by the Serial Chillers podcast.
So have you guys ever seen like a UFO? Had an encounter?
My
Anything?
mom did. My mom, when she was younger, lived in Hawaii. And my mom's like the most practical person in the world, too. So I believe her 100%. Saw a spaceship land in a field behind their house and actual aliens get out and play like Chinese fire drill, basically, and then get back in and leave.
I got goosebumps when you told me that story.
God, I wish.
Really? Yeah, isn't that wild?
I wish I had been there to see that or something similar to that. That sounds incredible.
did she describe what like the aliens look like?
Yeah, she said they look like they do in movies. Like they have the big head that's like
They're
large.
green?
No, she said they were
Sounds like tall grays.
yeah, tall grays. Well, actually, they were short,
Oh,
Small grays.
small grays.
Small
Yep.
grays.
Seriously, that's what they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, we're gonna talk about some of the grays. They come from so there's a pair of stars. The stars are named Zeta 1 Reticuli and Zeta 2 Reticuli.
Zeta
and,
Reticuli.
Together they are called Zeta Reticuli. Like you can't anywhere north of like Mexico City. Anywhere north of Mexico City, you can't see them like with the naked eye. You just can't see them because of the way everything's shaped and everything. But it's up there. You got to believe me that it's up there.
I believe you.
So there was this couple named Betty and Barney Hill. They were an interracial couple married in the early 60s. They were in 1961. They were returning from vacation in Vancouver. They were driving in rural New Hampshire down Route 3, and they saw a bright star. So they're driving along, and they could see out in the distance there was a star just kind of like cruising around, and they were like, "Oh, cool! It's like a falling star." But you know how those go by pretty quick, and this was hanging around, and so they were watching, and like driving along following the star, and then it was like it started going up and it would like crossed in front of the moon, and when it crossed in front of the moon they could see brightly colored lights. And so they pulled over and they were on vacation. So Barney grabs his binoculars, he gets out, he's like standing in a field kind of looking up. So yeah, he could see the disc through the binoculars, and he was pretty tripped out by it. I mean, I think anybody would be. So he told his wife Betty, he said, "Keep an eye on this." Gave her the binoculars. He got in the car and he took off. He was kind of following it as it's moving around. She's watching out the window with the binoculars. This thing kind of changes course and comes straight at him and starts. I don't want to say dive bombing because it didn't actually like hit them. What it did was they were in the hills up in rural New Hampshire, and this thing stopped about 400 feet up above the hills and was hovering there. And so he got out with his binoculars again, and he looked up, and he said he could clearly see people or figures in the windows of this craft, like looking at him.
What?
And he's standing there, and this thing is hovering up above him. And it's telling him, he said they were communicating with him, and like it wasn't like they were speaking because they're so far away talking, like, you know what I mean? It was telepathic, and they were telling him not to move and to keep looking. And so he sits there and he's staring at this thing, and he's almost in a trance-like state. Betty was calling his name. He wasn't responding. All of a sudden, he like snaps out of it. He runs back. He throws her the binoculars. He's like, "We gotta go," and he hauls ass out of there in his car. They're going along. They turn down like some side road, thinking they might lose it, and this thing zips up above them, stops. Their car dies. They're sitting there. This thing fills up the entire windshield of the car. Like it's close now. It's right above the road. And they said after that, they said there was a bright light. Everything got tingly. Like they both felt tingly through the whole body. And they woke up. They heard what was it? Rhythmic buzzing and beeping. And they were like, they felt like they were in an altered state of consciousness. They were just out of it. You know what I mean? They weren't like asleep or awake or like in a dream or anything like that. They were just kind of out of it.
They just got all lit for free.
Right. And then they said, a couple minutes later, there was more beeping and buzzing, and they were 35 miles down the road, and the only thing they could remember was swerving around a giant fireball that landed in the middle of the road. And they have no memory of anything else. But over the next few days, they were both having really vivid nightmares, and they went to see a therapist. And this therapist did what do they call it? Counter hypnosis and like regression therapy. And they were hypnotized and put in like this trance-like state and asked what they could remember about all this stuff. And it was apparently pretty gory and graphic.
Wow.
Yeah, and one of the cool things about it was when they were doing, it wasn't necessarily like dissection type experiments, but Betty was sitting on a table and they stuck her in the belly button with this really long needle, and she said it hurt. It was excruciating. And one of the figures kind of waved his hand, and when he did, the pain went away.
What?
Like didn't she say she was in like great peace, like none of it was really bothering her anymore, and like the pain
they told her basically to relax and that it wasn't going to hurt, and and when it did hurt, they took it away, and they were trying to be friendly and stuff like that. Barney had kind of a different experience. He I don't want to say was raped, but he was raped. And that it came up later in like his regression therapy and stuff, but they jerked him off, and they used a thing on him, like a machine that did it. And
a jerk off machine?
Yeah.
They invented the jerk off machine?
I would
I don't think
say
they
less
invented it.
a
I think they may
jerk
have
off
perfected
machine, more like a reproduction,
like a milking machine.
Yeah, milking machine. That's kind
A
of what I
milking
was.
machine, yes.
They were just
Yeah.
trying to get what helps
And
reproduce.
it really fucked him up. Like he was really messed up by that. And he was a very proud man and didn't like to admit that. And that was really tough for him to get through.
Yeah.
But when he saw him, he said they were wearing glossy black uniforms and little caps. He said the ship had like these big black bat-like wings that came out as it got closer to the ground, and they had red lights on them. There was this little thing that came out from the bottom, and that was where everybody started filing out before it even hit the ground.
That's so
like-
wild.
And like,
Yeah.
when one of the recovered memories was that like they willingly walked with the aliens, right? Like
Yeah.
they didn't understand why, but Betty and Barney just walked with them to the ship. Like the aliens were like, come with us, you'll be
I don't
fine.
want to ruin your story, but you do have a psychologist on here.
I was
But
gonna ask.
the research does say that recovered memories from hypnosis really aren't very accurate. Not like they thought they were.
And what
But it
exactly is regression therapy? And
Well, based on what Greg said, I mean, it sounds like they were trying to hypnotize them to regress to an earlier.
I see.
To unlock the they called it counter hypnosis, to like undo the hypnosis that made them forget. And one of the interesting things, and I don't know, Kendall, what you've seen about or experienced with this, but they said that without having heard what the other one, because they recorded the sessions, so without having heard the other one's recording or without having been there and heard what the other one said, they had very similar details as far as what the ship looked like when they were on it. The experience, the pain, being able to have it removed, being able to see the other one on the ship, being able to see and interact with them and hear them and communicate with them without actually having to talk. And one of the things, and Betty was an artist. She liked to paint and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And one of the paintings that she did afterwards was a 3D star map that they showed her, because she asked where they were from. And they showed her this 3D map, and they like pointed to a star like way in the back, and they asked her, "Where are you from?" And she couldn't find Earth on this star map. And so they were like, "Oh, shoot, never mind." And like that was that.
Yeah, I think, right, didn't they give her a book with the map in it? And like it was like one alien gave it to her, and as they were leaving, another alien was like, "Well,
they told her that they couldn't take it." Yeah, they told her that they couldn't take it, and they were like, "Oh, come on!" And they were like, "No, you can't take anything." And they were like, "We got to take something," and they said no, and they took it anyway, and then they got caught on the way out. Yeah,
yeah,
what?
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, so when they asked her about it, the painting and stuff like that, when she was counter hypnotized, and that was when she explained it. She explained what it was. She explained the painting. She explained the star map.
Well, and they also remember just first seeing the UFO before ever being abducted. Like they remember that without even having the hypnosis, right?
No, they don't. All they remembered was driving down the road and seeing a fireball on the road and having to swerve around it, which never really even actually happened. It was, and that's common with a lot of UFO abductions, is false memories being implanted. So you, like the Mandela effect, where your memory, you're like, oh yeah, this totally happened, until somebody's like, no, that didn't, and you're like, wait a second, did it?
I think also like Barney was having like physical pain in the nether regions, and it was kind of freaking him out, and there was like some weird things happening there, and that was kind of like bringing back some of the memories initially.
But yeah, he definitely had marks from the machine.
So at what point should he have drawn a triangle?
The second he saw them, the second he realized what was happening, he should have drawn a triangle.
Okay.
Seems like they drew the triangle around his dick, though, right?
See, and if he had drawn it, they'd have been like, oh, and they probably would have put their dicks in the triangle.
Yeah.
This is getting out of control.
Zeta Reticuli.
Yeah, so that was the Zeta Reticuli, and Barney didn't live for too much longer after that. Betty lived until like 2004, I think.
Yeah, they're beautiful, beautiful people.
Rest in peace, Barney.
Yeah.
Good story.
Yeah,
so interesting.
I do love that story.
What year did you say that happened?
1961. It was September 19th, and they were abducted on the 19th, like late at night, and returned back on the 20th, early in the morning.
Seems like there's a lot of alien shit going on around that time, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's
50s, 60s.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's part of the speculation, is that like after the Roswell crash, that was the first like accident, and then we got the technology. The ship was sending out distress calls, and it brought in others, and that's why there's so many sightings around that time, is they're coming in for the distress calls and stuff. And then once we got the technology and started reverse engineering it, because they talk about that like happening at the Dulce facility and at S4, was reverse engineering the UFOs. And there's been people who've openly talked about being involved in that, you know, being put into a cockpit of a UFO at gunpoint and being told, build this. And he's like, fucking how? And they're like, that's not my job. My job is to make you build this. And so then they test fly stuff like that. And I mean, if you really want to get deep in the weeds, that's kind of where Wi-Fi technology comes from. and why we have that kind of technology as early as we do. Because I mean, we went from the early 1918, the first flight with the Wright brothers, and to being on the moon in less than 60 years, in less than 50 years.
I think it was like 45 years.
Yeah. So, I mean, where do you get that kind of technology? You get it from motherfucking space. The first space shuttle we sent up had less computing power than than the original iPhone.
I thought it was like a T90 calculator or some dumb shit like
What?
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wild.
Aliens, man, they fucking
That
exist.
is wild.
Look it all up. Yeah. All right. Well, shit. Let's get back into this non-alien story. Now it feels like it's gonna be boring. Great.
Thanks, Greg.
Yep.
So-
Murder's never boring.
Right. So, if you guys will recall, he has murdered this young girl, Janine. What's it? Giancarlo Nicarico. That's right. Janine Nicarico. And 3 other men are in prison for it. 2 of them have been sentenced to death for it. Question number 4. It seems he's gotten away with it again. How many kills in total will Brian Dugan have? 250 points for the closest, 1,000 if you nail it. How many total victims will he have?
5.
Kendall says 5. Andy.
I'm gonna say 9.
Andy goes with 9. Kendall's tied this thing up.
Woohoo!
500 to 500 because it's going to kill 3.
Okay, so just reaching serial killer threshold.
Yeah.
So
Right?
that's correct. Well, there's some people say 2. 2 with a cooling off period is considered. There are different thresholds. I don't think there is one official, as far as I know. There are multiple different, because some say 3 with a cooling off period that's not family. That some are more specific than others. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the FBI uses 2 with a cooling off period.
Oh.
Yeah.
They actually say a series of murders, often with no apparent motive and typically following a characteristic, predictable behavior pattern.
That's the FBI?
Google.
Yeah, pretty much then.
Right? Same thing.
Yeah.
So, we've got a tie game here, guys. We got 4 more questions down the line to go. Somehow I thought this was going to be a short episode, and no, it is not. July 15th, 1984. It's almost 17 months after the murder of Janine. He sees a young woman, 27-year-old Donna Schnorr. She's a nurse. He pulls up at a stoplight, and he sees her across, and he just becomes enamored with her. So he starts following her, and he is driving, and she's on a longer trip, I guess. So he's following her for quite some time, and he gets her into a more secluded area, and he forces her car off the road. He runs her off the road, and he pulls her out. He beats her mercilessly and rapes her. He then takes her down to a nearby quarry and kills her by drowning her in the quarry.
That's awful.
Right. So, May 6th, 1985, nearly 10 months after the attack on Donna Schnorr, Dugan kidnapped and raped a 21-year-old woman. Her name is Sharon Grajic in North Aurora. She survived the attack. Now, the thing about Brian Dugan at this point is he's not killing all of his victims. Some he's just content, it seems, to rape and let go, which I don't know if that's, it kind of goes back to his childhood a little bit, where he's just like, please, someone catch me doing this. I need to be caught.
It seems more like that impulse control we talked about again, where, some of them, if he's abusive enough, they're like, okay, I'm not going to say anything. And maybe he wasn't too rough, so, he can deny it or whatever. But some, if he, goes a little too far, now he doesn't have a choice. He sees, maybe. I don't know.
But he doesn't seem to care if he can get identified.
Yeah,
Right?
it does
Well,
not seem that way.
I don't think he's thinking about that. He's not thinking about the end result. He's not thinking about the
Yeah.
end game. He's thinking about the what's going on in the here and now.
But psychopaths, I feel like, would think about the end game, right? Like you want
They
to.
would take precautions.
Yeah.
As far as I know,
I thought-
it never mentioned anywhere that he was like wearing a ski mask at the time, or it doesn't mean that he
Yeah.
wasn't, but nothing that blatantly mentioned that. Well, just 20 days after that attack on Sharon Grajic, he also attempts to kidnap a 19-year-old female, but she gets away. She saw his license plate and reported it to authorities, but they did not look into it.
What?
Well, they figured
Swing and a miss.
Yeah, I think 1985. The cops were like, "Yeah, you got away. You're good. Like, what's to look into?"
This
Everybody was trying to be the
police work.
next Axel Foley.
On May 29th, Dugan kidnaps and rapes a 16-year-old girl. He gives her his name, but she's too frightened to report the incident. She doesn't remember it for years, or she doesn't decide to report it until years later, and at that time can only remember his first name, Brian. Very should narrow it down.
Stands out.
Yep. On June 2nd, 1985. Okay, so Melissa Ackerman is 7 and her 8-year-old friend Opal Horton are riding their bikes in Samonac, Illinois, when they were confronted by Brian Dugan. Dugan first grabbed Opal and threw her into the car, and he went back for Melissa Ackerman, and at that time Opal escapes. But Melissa Ackerman is thrown into the car, and at this time he drives away. I think he believed that both girls were in the car when he drove away. Opal is able to remember at least part of his license plate. Some places say that that she remembered all of it, most of it. But at any rate, she was able to, at 8 years old, identify a vehicle and the license plate.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Melissa's body was found several weeks later, about 6 miles from her home. On June 3rd, 1985, the following day after the discovery of Melissa, Dugan was arrested at his job. It came to the attention of a police officer from a neighboring town of Samonac that he reported encountering Dugan about the out-of-date vehicle sticker on his car. So he had out-of-date registration. This cop that wasn't from around town was just like, "Hey, buddy, come on, get the registration figured out, friendly warning." And so this cop remembers that. And the reason this cop is able to remember that is because of Opal's description of the vehicle and license plate that she's able to give when her friend goes missing.
Hmm.
So, he's arrested at work. Opal Horton, hailed as a hero, should be at least as far as I can see. She was given the recognition that she deserved for helping in his apprehension. Let's see. Okay, so I'm sorry. I had it a little bit incorrect. He was arrested the day after her abduction. They had not found her body yet. And on the day after they did find her body, he was charged with the murder. Mm-hmm. So there was no body, no murder. They found the body. The murder was on. So once Melissa Ackerman's body was found, Dugan was charged with her murder when police were able to link him to the crimes through physical evidence found in his belongings. In exchange for avoiding the death penalty, he confessed to the murders of both Melissa Ackerman and Donna Schnorr. He offered no real explanation for the crimes, stating, quote, "It might have been for the sex, but I don't understand why. I wish I know why I did a lot of things, but I don't." So, that's the first time you get to hear from him, Kendall, really, and directly, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, he did it. I'm wondering what happened to the men who got the death penalty.
We'll get back to it, I promise.
Oh, okay.
In November 1985, we go to court for the Ackerman and Schnorr murders. How does he plead? Guilty, not guilty by reason of insanity, or he does not enter a plea, so the court does for him.
Guilty, not guilty, guilty by reason of insanity, or the court enters a plea for him.
Yeah, and it was not guilty by reason of insanity.
Sorry, that's what I meant.
Okay.
I think that's my guess. Not guilty by reason of insanity, because then he's not taking responsibility.
I would say not guilty.
He's going not guilty. He's going the ultimate not taking responsibility. I didn't do it.
Oh my gosh. What a douche kebab.
That's not really what happened. Both of you guys missed it on this one because he returns to his old ways and pleads guilty to the murders of 7-year-old Samanat girl Melissa Ackerman and 27-year-old nurse from Kane County, Donna Schnorr. So,
always confessing.
We've got 3 questions to go. Still a tie. November 19th, 1985, Brian Dugan was sentenced to 2 life sentences. Quick 2, question number 6. In addition to the 2 life sentences, he is given how many additional years? They're going to tack some years onto his 2 life sentences. How many?
Do we get to know for what?
This is a part of the sentence. Like, this is the...
For murder.
The 2 murders.
Yes,
yeah.
for the 2 murders. He's getting the 2 life sentences plus this amount of years.
50.
Kendall says 50 additional years. Andy?
I'm going to say 150.
Andy says 150 and gets the points because he's
What?
given 2 additional life sentences plus 215 years.
No.
Yes.
Nice.
Andy takes a lead with 2 questions to go. 750 to 500. Still plenty of time. Don't worry. Don't even worry. Now it's November of 1985, and Dugan's lawyers offered a hypothetical confession to the murders of Janine Nicarico on behalf of Dugan, and if he did not receive the death penalty, due to pretty much the fact that he couldn't get what he did on that day straight. The judge said, "No, like this doesn't get to come into court. Like you don't even fuck you." So he's trying to admit in 85 to this murder to get the death. I'm going to give you details. Take death off the table for all of this. I got another murder that you don't even know that I'm a part of. Hypothetically, what if that were the case? Would that be? So I don't know how that works. OJ's got it all figured out too. On November 25th, 1985, he began serving his sentence in... On November 25th, 1985, he began serving his sentence at the Pontiac, Illinois Correctional Facility. On July 30th, 1987, Brian Dugan is stabbed 9 times in the chest and arm while in the Pontiac Correctional Facility. I'm sure you guys know this, but if you don't, child molesters and killers are not very welcome even in prison society. So he did not have a good time while he was in prison. Obviously, stabbed 9 times by, what was that you said earlier, Greg? A shank made of...
dried up toilet paper?
Yeah, that very well may have been the weapon used to assault Brian Dugan in this cell block. So, there you go. Little street justice for Brian Dugan. Andy likes it. See?
Wow.
Yep.
Oh, so good. Okay. September 4th, 1987, Dugan takes the stand for the second time. He refused to testify for the murder of Janine Nicarico without being promised immunity by the court. He hypothetically admits to the murder again, says, what if come on, let's do this one more time. I got some information. We can retry this. We can make this happen. Judge again says, nah, no dice. January of 1995, 8 years later, after 2 men had been convicted and sentenced to death row for the murder of Janine Nicarico, DNA excluded them from the murder. However, it did not exclude Brian Dugan. And it was reported that only 3 in 10,000 men could have had this DNA. So the other 2 had just been eliminated.
DNA for the win.
November 15th,
Yeah.
2002, authorities in DuPage County disclosed new DNA information that is more accurate than the tests before and matched Dugan conclusively to the rape and murder of Janine Nicorico. January 2005, Dugan was charged officially with the murder of Janine Nicorico based on that DNA evidence. On March 1st, 2006, Brian Dugan's sister has an answer for those debating whether he should get the death penalty. So it's like a little article. I just kind of loved his sister in this, so I wanted to just read it to you guys. I took out some of the longer or more boring parts, so I'm going to really quickly go over it. But before we do, question number 7. Does his sister believe he deserves death? Is it A, yes, but she's sad about it? B, no, but he does deserve to stay in prison? C, yes, and she'll flip the switch? Or D, she's torn? Turn it inside out so I can't see. Yeah,
Yes,
she's sad about
but
it.
she is. I say yes, but she's sad about it.
No, but he does deserve to stay in prison. Yes, and she'll flip the switch, or she is torn about it.
I'm going to say, no, but he deserves to stay in prison.
And nobody's getting points on that one either.
What?
Because his sister says, if in fact he is given the death penalty, I'd be happy to flip the switch.
Yeah, because she's the
Oh,
one he
wow.
like
Yeah.
abused all the time when they
Right.
were little,
Oh,
right?
forgot
And
about
he
that.
threatened her later. So Hillary Bird, Dugan's older sister, said, he is a cold-blooded killer. I don't think he understands what it means to cause anyone pain or anguish. Dugan's indictment in November for the 1983 murder of Janine Nicorico, who was 10 of Naperville, has caused debate over whether the costly trial is unnecessary expense for the convict who is already in prison for life. So that was kind of the argument. It was like, what? He's already got 2 life sentences plus 215 years. And they were like, nah, like this is... justice must be had. And his sister says that her recurring nightmare is that he would get out of jail one day. Like somehow those cases are going to get turned over, and like this one needs to be tried because,
I mean, he's got a pretty good habit of it already.
right, the backup needs to be there.
Yeah,
you
he
know?
gets out like pretty frequently.
She said, quote, he really and truly has no respect for life, for joy, or for anything good. He has said out of court that he also killed Janine, but defense lawyers probably will argue that the statements cannot be used against him because they were made as part of a plea bargaining process. That was the hypotheticals. She said that in July of 1975, he threatened to chop up her son, who was then 2, and the babysitter when she refused to let him have stolen items in the house and run them with her car. I'll fucking chop up your kid, let me use your goddamn car. 3 days after that, he threatened her again and kicked the headlights out of her car so she couldn't drive to her Villa Park apartment in the dark. But he was promptly arrested by an off-duty Aurora police officer for breaking into a different car that same night. She said, quote, I am sorry that I let him into my life when I got into my 20s. I knew there was something wrong with him, and I tried to help him, but I've learned my lesson. Last week, DuPage County Public Defender Robert Miller gave a letter to the DuPage County Board Judicial and Public Safety Committee saying that they would not immediately seek additional funding to defend the, quote, voluminous and time-consuming case. However, he said, that means the case, which includes some 200,000 pages of documents, will require patience. He also said that they might get assistance from the State Appellate's Defender's Office and the State Capital Litigation Trust Fund. So this fucking case is huge. And 200,000 documents. I mean, I have never done a murder trial, but I can't imagine how many 200,000 page document trials there are.
Totally. And I'm surprised then that there's not a lot about it online.
That's what I'm saying. Like this, I mean, I put episodes together in a week. Can more things be found? I'm sure. If I had a month to put together every episode, I may have been able to find more. Truly, though, in the digging that I can do in a week, which there's a lot. It's the internet. Everything is out there. There was not a ton to be found. Like I said, I put it together with a lot of archived Chicago Tribune articles. That's where just a ton of the information came from. It was just really old-looking Chicago Tribune websites.
Well, they're from Aurora, right?
Yep. On July 22nd, 2009, Dugan entered a plea of guilty to the kidnapping, rape, and murder of Nicorico. So he's finally just said, I did it. Like, you got me. Here it is. Question number 8. It's a simple yes or no. Do they sentence him to death?
Yes.
Kendall says yes. Andy is also going to say yes to defend his victory here. On November 11th, 2009, Brian Dugan was indeed sentenced to death. Congratulations, Andy. You have won episode 48
What?
of the Serial
He
Killers
guessed
podcast.
$35 they stole from KFC.
I was closer.
You guessed 50,000.
KFCs are probably rich.
Not in 1973.
Still a better guess than $35.
So, Kendall, this is for you here, actually. Okay, but actually, there's two more things about it. He's sentenced to death. December 16th, the judge set the execution date for February 25th, 2010. However, his sentence was later commuted to life in prison after the death penalty was abolished in the state of Illinois.
Seriously.
So after all of that.
God damn it.
So now he's got 3 life sentences plus 215 years that he must serve. Still alive as far as I know.
Makes sense.
And this one here, here we go. Prior to Dugan being charged, Rolando Cruz, Alejandro Hernandez, and Stephen Buckley were indicted in March of 84. The joint trial was held in 85. Cruz and Hernandez were convicted, but the jury deadlocked on Buckley. We kind of went over that a little bit. In November of 85, Brian Dugan was already in jail and being tried for the murder of 7-year-old. We know this. Dugan plea bargained. In 87, the charges against Buckley were dismissed by a judge. On January 19th, 1988, the Illinois Supreme Court struck down the conviction of Cruz and Hernandez because the two did not have separate trials. Both were retired despite public pressure on the DuPage State Attorney's Office to pursue the Dugan confession. Cruz was convicted in his second trial of February of 1990. So they got split trials. He's convicted in his second trial. At this point, we don't have the new DNA evidence. So the second trial of Hernandez ended in a hung jury in May of 1990. After his third trial, Hernandez was convicted and sentenced of 80 years in prison on May 17th, 1991. So he gets a second trial, hung jury, he gets a third trial, and he gets 80 years. Meanwhile, Cruz had appealed in December of 92, and his second conviction was upheld by the Illinois Supreme Court. But in May of 1993, the court agreed to rehear the case, and on July 14th, 1994, Cruz was ordered a third trial. The Illinois Appellate Court overturned the second conviction of Hernandez on January 30th of 1995. During this third trial, a sheriff's lieutenant reversed his testimony, and Cruz was acquitted in November of 1995.
Wow.
So they're actually acquitted before the DNA evidence comes to light. A state investigator was appointed to review the recanted testimony, and in December of 1995, charges against Hernandez were completely dismissed by the state's attorney. 7 DuPage County law enforcement officials, 3 prosecutors, and 4 deputies were indicted by a grand jury in December of 1996 on charges of conspiracy to convict Cruz despite being aware of exculpatory evidence. After numerous proceedings in June of 1999, all 7 had been acquitted for framing the men. So they got away with it.
Damn, dude.
Yep. Cruz, Hernandez, and Buckley reached a $3.5 million civil settlement with the DuPage County for their wrongful prosecution suit in September 26th of 2000. And in 2002, Governor George Ryan granted Cruz a pardon.
Wow.
So that's the story
Nice.
of Brian Dugan, and that's the, I guess, silver lining there is at least those three gentlemen didn't go down for that fuckface's crimes.
Yeah, but how long were they in jail?
Oh,
While
a
they
long
were
time.
waiting
A long
to
time.
be- Yeah.
Over 10 years.
Oh my God.
I'm not saying their settlement was worth it, but I'm glad they got something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's rare. So that's cool.
Yeah. So that's it, guys. Man, we ran a long episode. I'm sorry, Greg.
No worries.
That was fun, man. I really appreciate you guys coming on. Congratulations, Andy, for your victory.
Thank you.
I'm proud of you. Here, let me give you one of these. Yes.
Hey.
There you go.
Boo.
Oh, come on.
Wah, wah.
I'm a sore loser.
Well, you'll have
No
to
kidding.
return to
Jeez.
you'll have to return to try again, Dr. Kendall.
Fair enough.
We appreciate all your medical input. It's always good to have a doctor on the show.
Yeah. No medical input, only psychological.
Psychological. Yeah, that just shows my intelligence in the field.
My only medical input is pushing a baby back inside the uterus doesn't seem to go well for anyone.
Just don't do it.
Unless you strap the knees.
Well, then that's going to do it. Thanks, Greg, for always coming out. Anything you want to add to the very end here?
Actually, I had something for this earlier, but I forgot it.
I got to start writing it down, man. Got to start writing it
Yeah.
down. We'll add it to the outro.
Yeah, maybe.
Kendall, Andy, anything you guys want to throw out there? Social media, shout outs, anything like that. Now's your time.
Oh man! Shout out to my dog Benny.
What? He's been barking in the background of this
He's the
whole
one that's been
episode.
barking in the background the whole time. So shout out to him for being a total dick.
Yeah,
But,
follow
yeah.
Andy's music accounts.
Yeah. Andy T. Thornton on Instagram. Thornton spelled with the N. THORNTON.
Thornton.
Andy T. Thornton.
Find him. We'll put a link up. We'll make it easy. Andy will be very easy to find. All right. Well, then, thank you guys for joining. Thanks for hanging late night. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And as always, thank you for listening. Repeating myself. Thank you for listening to episode 48 of the Serial Chillers podcast.
See ya.
Thank you.
That was episode 48. Thank you guys so much for sticking in there with us. Brian Dugan was beyond being forgiven. All we'll say is he's a certified fuckface. Thank you to Dr. Kendall and Andy for coming out, and especially Dr. Kendall for teaching us some shit tonight. Reach out to the show if you want to. There's a lot of ways. I have a special guest here in the outro to tell you how you can find us.
You can go to Facebook, Serial Chillers Podcast. The group is Serial Chillers Podcast. It's closed. Wait for acceptance. It's pretty elite, but I've got you on the list. The Instagram at Serial Chillers Podcast. Twitter at Chillers Podcast. Email serialchillerspodcast@gmail.com. Call or text the voicemail line 1-805-666-2513. Again, 1-805-666-2513.
It's especially important right now.
Yeah, do it. Do it now. You only have like 2 weeks left to do it by the time you hear this.
Right. So we
No, you have less than 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You only have a week left to do it.
It's like less than a week. Call the voicemail line, leave a voicemail, literally anything, you guys. Ask a question of Greg or myself. A would you rather?
Don't be an asshole.
Yeah, don't be an
That's all I
asshole. We're not
ask.
going to use it if you're an asshole. Just
Asshole.
Send us a voicemail. We'd love to hear from you guys. We want to put together a cool episode 50 kind of for you from us.
Yes.
So don't forget about merchandise at serialchillerspodcast.threadless.com. There's a ton on there. And the Patreon, of course. Thank you, everybody who's given to the Patreon, patreon.com/serialchillerspodcast. Thank you, everybody who continues to do it. Greg, why don't you take the last line? Send them out.
Remember, talk to strangers.
You son of a bitch.
He's an air